These 50 people are going to say no, these 50 people are going to say yes. So understanding those issues are part of what you have to do. That's not a home run with a light, because it creates issues coming in and out with the gate, coming forward, the backup coming in. There's just not a clear, safe answer at the front of the building. So let's see how these new safety measures come in when they start this spring. Let's see how the left turn signal, which has already started working up with the folks at Self-Help, coming down all the way down to Bell Boulevard, working with 169 and the two principals, David Abbott and Vanessa Rosa, school time dismissals, and as of actually this afternoon, we just got another slow zone implemented for the new school at 376, which just opened up in September, because there also, as with all of our schools, we put in a bill that every school should be a slow zone, right? Because what school shouldn't be a slow zone? What area around the 4 blocks of a school shouldn't be? Add to that, we have the 2 schools, we have a senior center, we have a shopping center, we have a library, we have a kebab, we have a thriving business association, and we have everyone here at the Bay Club. That creates even more of an impact. So we are, again, we are a driving district. We are dependent on our vehicles, which makes us very different than the rest of the city, which is why we always have to fight for those things. Jaco, if you want to be our last question, since we're coming up to the...
Actually, I will make a statement.
I'm sure you have a few statements, my friend.
Yeah. The first statement began to clarify about the light, because I was personally involved. As you
Everyone.
Know, as you know, the thing is, the light outside the Bay Club, people were ready to kill me. They've been proposing to put a light outside the Bay Club. So with the help with Mr. Vallone, the DOT did a study, and they approved to put a safe crossing by 211 and 23rd Street, which will be implemented by the spring. They did the study regarding a light, and they rejected it, and many people in the Bay Club were against it. So the compromise was to have a safe crossing on 23rd and 211th, which is the QN2, Q28, and that's going to be starting by the spring. That's the statement. The question, I have 2 questions related to the Bay Club specifically. Is one regarding the tax rebate or tax abatement for the cost of local law 11 that we have to incur every 5 to 7 years, which is significant, which is specifically to us in any condo, a high-rise above 6 story height. Who's going to support in the Assembly and the Senate in the city to help and approve a bill that's in the Assembly and the Senate, and so far, not the mayor, not the current people, but to help us to get the bill approved, get a tax abatement. The second question is, Mr. Graziano, you mentioned single and 2-family houses to get a cap. However,
and co-ops and condos.
So the co-op and condo, that's I want to clarify. This is 1 and 2-family houses, class 1. We are class 2,
Correct.
Which is a condo. I want to make sure that everybody, that's affecting us, a tax cap to all class 2, not just 1 or 2-family houses. That's the 2 questions I have.
Okay, so there's 2 questions. You have local law 11 and the tax cap. Local law 11 creates a undue burden on our co-ops for doing the repairs and the inspections for the outside of the property, and the cost is borne by you. It's every 10 years. So with Jacob's help, we put in a couple of different bills. 5 years, but if you fail, or if there's 3 pass grades you can get: pass with improvements, or fail. So on the 5 years, what we're asking to do, the reason why the 10 came up, was to put in a bill, and if you passed the inspection on the 5th year, that you would be waived for the following 5th year. But if you failed the inspection on the 5th year, you would not be waived, because then you'd have some type of systemic problem there. So that was one of the bills we put in. Ed Gornstein and Toby Stavitsky have bills up in Albany also to get the reimbursement. The tax cap, listen, we do student government fairs, we go in with the kids and we ask them to come up with ideas on how to make the school better and make the country better and make your community better, right? Ice cream for lunch, no homework, all that good stuff. 2% tax cap is right up there what the kids come up with. It's never going to happen. It sounds good, but it's never going to happen. So back to the world of reality, there's a 6% tax cap on the 1 family for 1 and 2 family. What we were trying to do is even extend it to 8% for co-ops, just to have something to guide the ceiling. There is no ceiling right now for class 2. And that's what not only Yaakov, but Warren Schreiber, the co-op condo, who has given us an A+ rating for all the work that we've done with co-op and condos, is to try to get that done. That's also a bill that we have resolutions in support in City Council and in support in Albany. The real fight is going to be, is there ever going to be someone who's going to stand up for co-ops and condos as a mayor, as a governor? Because that's what we need. Because we get forgotten. We get overwhelmed by the rest of the city. And they use our tax money here, this district. This district pays the second highest taxes in the city, and we get no resources back. That creates a non-happy district. Because how much can the middle class take? Right? So when we go down there, we fight. They wanted to raise the real estate tax again this year. We said no. It's still too high. But there's no protections for co-op. So we got to get that tax cap. And even putting it at 8%, if not 6% to match the one family, would give our co-op boards and the managers the ability to budget short-term and long-term for assessments and the ability for quality of life. Somebody wants to talk about affordable housing. This is it. If we don't have our co-ops and condos and places to live, where are we going to go? So this is sustaining the properties that we live in now is the truest form of affordable housing by not forgetting us. Because if you forget us and we can't afford here, there's no place left to go. We have no senior housing here in the district. There's no ability to go anyplace else. We must continue to protect and fight for co-op and condos. Hopefully, we will get someone down at City Hall for this. Mr. Garcia.
On the state, I know it's a state level convention, what do you think the chances are getting any relief on local law 11? Only reason why I emphasize is, we paid $1.7 million.
That's a big hit. He said 1.7 million.
1.7 million, and that's a big hit for us. So, I know you're not the state, but what do you think?
So we had a meeting, and Yakov and the board members were there with the Department of Finance to look at other ways to do the inspection. And what the commissioner got back to us was they're looking at the ability for you and the co-op boards to use drones and less expensive ways to inspect without having to put all the scaffolding and the costs involved, just so that they can get an aerial visual of what the roof and what the outside of the buildings look like. Something to bring that 1.7 million down, because right now that's the law. So talking about things in the future doesn't help us for the next coming inspection that's coming. So we're trying to do the reimbursement, like Yakov was talking, to bringing down the cost or a waiver for someone who's passed the inspection. Up in Albany, it's got to get bipartisan support. It'd be nice to have a state senator that didn't switch parties, but we need to have folks that are actually supporting what we need here. It's got a shot, but anytime you talk about losing tax revenue, do you know that almost 50% of the budget comes from taxes paid by us, by 1 and 2 family homes? 50% of the budget. So if you were to drop that to 2%, where's that money come from? What cop are you firing? What fire department's being closed? What school is being shut down? You have to deal with the budget. And this city's got many, many responsibilities. Our point as being conservative is don't spend all the money all the time. Put a rainy day fund and don't increase spending. Work with what we've got. Don't make it any higher. Don't hire any unnecessary employees down at the city, and work with our police force, fire department, what we have. If you drop that to 2%, say goodbye to your police officers, say goodbye to what's happening. Because there's a tax revenue built in, 50% to pay for what we have. The reality is in New York City, we have to make sure they don't touch it another penny, because we've paid too much. And let's see what the budget is. Has anyone ever sat and come in front of us and said, here's the $81 billion budget for New York City, and here's how it trickles down to everyone else? I'd like to see that. You'd like to come down and say what's coming in. All I can tell you is it doesn't come back out to us. I see you there, Rob. So, Dave, I don't know, let's have Paul in there.
Well, you just heard an enormous amount of contradictions coming from my opponent. So the first thing I'll say is this. A 2% property tax cap here will not cause the city to collapse. Why are 1 and 2 family homes the backbone of the tax system in the city of New York? Because our 1 and 2 family homes are subsidizing developers from, again, his family's lobbying firm, helping these developers build luxury condominiums, getting 30-year tax abatements that we pay for, and you're paying for it as well. So that's issue number 1. Issue number 2, I heard my opponent talk about all the money that he's brought back to this district. But then he stated today that we're the second most taxed district in the whole city, and we don't get anything back. So that seems to be a bit of a contradiction.
Well, explain.
Third thing is that you've got a budget of 80 billion plus in this city. You're talking about something that has a lot of support up in Albany, just to let you know. A 2% property tax cap for the city. There is a lot of support for it by legislators in the city because they know that their constituents are seriously pissed off that their taxes have increased so dramatically over such a short period of time. And this also goes for co-ops where a lot of that tax increase gets disguised because it's rolled into maintenance. Okay? Now obviously in your situation it's a little different. So all I can say is when it comes to having, again, I stated it at the beginning, pushing for a 2% property tax cap, I was told 15 years ago when I started helping to rezone these neighborhoods that it would never happen. We'd never get it passed. Well, we did. I was also told that Fort Totten, which I helped create a park and a historic district there 20 years ago, that would never happen. That was going to become a college campus and condominiums, college campus for St. John's University. So suspend your disbelief, people, because if I'm able to get this done, and I'm able to pass more legislation than my opponent, as an individual never having been elected on the city council, then other things can also happen. And I will state that very clearly, that a 2% property tax cap, again, not only for 1 and 2 family homes, but co-ops and condos, because that's the fairness. It shouldn't just be 1 and 2 family homes. It should be all small holdings, not developers getting huge tax abatements, which again, his family lobbying firm is getting paid $5 million a year to help these people negotiate that process. As for Local Law 11, again, and I said this at the previous statements, I'm happy to help you as much as possible to get your situation taken care of. Not just talking about, little things here and there. This is, again, it's a systemic issue. It's a systemic issue that is unfair. It's an unfair situation, and I am all about trying to solve unfair situations, and that's what I've been doing. So I hope that answers your question.
Just these last two.
This is for Paul Vallone. Paul, I and we really appreciate the work you've done to help for safe crossing across 23rd Avenue by the street modifications that you've endorsed. However, with respect, you did not address the safety of 1,000 cars and 1,800...
Actually, I think we did.
Let me just finish. Of the population of the Bay Club trying to get out of our exit with safety, which I believe a stop sign will help immeasurably.
Arthur, we just had that conversation about 5 minutes ago. We talked about the traffic study, we talked about the light, we talked about a stop sign, we talked about 50% of the people wanting it, 50% of the people not wanting it. The DOT finishing the study, and they're going to be implementing new safety measures this spring, and we'll see how that works. If those safety measures now don't alleviate, it's never going to fix 100%. We know that, right? It's just never going to fix 100% the congestion coming out of one exit with all of those, the two buildings coming out at the same time. It's very, very difficult. It's difficult coming in tonight. It's clearly a challenge. So let's see how these new safety measures come in. But like always, your concerns are heard. I see everybody mumbling about it. It's there. It's prevalent, and these are the first steps. So when you came and spoke to us, and everyone from the board came, we brought the DOT, we brought the 109, and now they're implementing. We have the left turn signal for the first time. We have the safety measures coming in. It's a process. It's not always the best, but it's happening.
Okay.
Now, if these don't work, or if we still see the same problems in 6 months, let's revisit it and see what we can do next.
Okay,
Daniel?
all I can ask is stay with it.
Stay with it. Stay with the course.
Thank you.
You're very
Next
welcome.
question.
All right, my dear, you are the last question of the evening.
Oh, that's my honor.
No pressure.
That's my honor to
You're very
finish
welcome.
today.
You're very
Hi,
welcome.
my name is Lisa. So
Good
I
evening, Lisa.
live in Bay Club for past 15 years. My question, actually, is my suggestion for both of you, no matter who is going to elect. It's about PS 169 because I have 2 kids, and my daughter, the younger one right now, is 9 years old. She is go to PS 169. I just feel every morning it's like it's very dangerous. No matter you walk or drive there, it's all traffic, and everyone has and trying to make on time. So probably in the future we can suggest like split the go to school time for 10 minutes difference. It's like for example from kindergarten to 3rd grade we can do 8 o'clock, but the other 2 grade you can do 8:10. So it can little bit solve this kind of problem. Then it's lower the traffic there too. And also the other suggest is before, like my son, 15 years ago, he went to PS 169. At that time, it's only PS 169, so like all facility, like a cafeteria, library, and there is no problem. But right now, 10 years ago, it's Bell move in. So right now, actually, I participated a few times at the lunchtime. Every class, they only have 15 minutes for lunch. That's impossible for all kids. I can feel like I noticed like more than half kids didn't eat anything because they don't have time. Then it's all dumped in the garbage. If there is like one kid, they need to go to bathroom at that time, that means the time passed by. They have to go back to school. Go back to the class. So 50 minutes is totally not enough for lunch. And
So have you met, you know David Abbott and Vanessa Rosa, right? So the 2 principals for 169 and Bell Academy. David Abbott has Bell Academy, Vanessa Rosa,
Yeah.
used to be Vanessa Chambers, is at 169.
Mhm.
Why don't we talk about 15 minutes for lunch doesn't sound like a good plan. And they are overcrowded, like all of our schools.
that's why.
And they're having difficulty. So the good news for 169, which I don't even think they're aware of yet, is that school has been looked at for an expansion. So they're going to look at the feasibility of the structural integrity if they can go up a floor or 2 for future classes, which would be great because there's going to be even more people coming. And the demand for 169 and Bell Academy is through the roof. Other middle school children would love to come to Bell Academy, but they can't get in because the kids from 169 are coming up to Bell. So, and the safety measures, the parents cried with happiness when we put in the speed bump in front. For years and years they asked for speed bumps out front. In fact, cars went flying over the first time it was there because no one even knew it was there. So slowing down that traffic, it's such a wide street, slowing down that traffic was a big step. So alternating school dismissal times, all that stuff is great, and that's where we have the superintendents, Danielle Junta, Danielle Domingo, they sit and they have meetings with the CEC and our parents and our PTAs to say which school can do an alternating school dismissal, which school works best. That program's actually worked, and sometimes the community gets involved and voluntarily shuts down a block to help out with school dismissal for the 15 minutes to a half hour. That's starting to happen in different places in Queens. So there's different options, and traffic and so, just like Arthur was saying, traffic issues for all of us, whether we're seniors or children, is always going to be a problem. So thank you.
To answer your first question, staggering schedules is a very good idea. I mean, just in general. A lot of high schools do it.
Yeah.
Some middle schools are doing it.
Uh-huh.
So to have it at PS 169, I think it's a no-brainer. Anywhere where you can create an orderly procession for kids and parents instead of a chaotic mess is always an important thing. As for lunch, again, similarly, it's about staggering schedules. One thing, and I'll add this in, there are, I'm product of public schools myself. My sister, both of my parents were educators. So I take this stuff very seriously, and I take public school issues very seriously. And again, while we have some of the best schools in the city, we're still having problems. We're having problems. And again, these are problems that didn't exist when I went to public school here at all. So an expansion of PS 169, that's all well and good. But if there's continued increase of kids there, there's going to be continued increase of more parents and more cars and more people dropping off and picking up. So again, I think that the only solution is to create a staggered system where, for example, there are schools where you have periods, right? And so a whole bunch of kids come at the 8:10 mark, and a whole bunch of other kids come at 8:45, and a bunch of other. It's not that it shouldn't be that extreme for young kids, but there's no reason not to. And frankly, again, when I was a kid, my grandmother lived right across the street, basically, from my public school. So they would let the kids out, walk to their, if they had a parent or a relative, to go have lunch at home, which is incredible. Now, I would love to see a system like that back in place because, frankly, the school lunches are nothing to write home about. And one of the things I've looked at, actually, is how do we get better food for the kids. And if you look at other places in the world, it's so grotesque, the stuff that we're feeding our kids. And again, having a 19-month-old and having a teenager now, a stepson who's in high school, just looking at the school lunches and remembering what was the fare 35 years ago when I was in school, which is why I always had a bag lunch brought from home, because the food is pretty awful. So I think it's not just a matter of making sure that the kids have enough time to eat. It's making sure that the quality that they have is not only edible, but good for them. So that's how far I would go. And again, these are all discussions that, this is not in a vacuum. This is stuff that I've talked about with other people who have kids my age who are in the public schools right now. So this is feedback coming back to me from many, many places. So that's my response.
Okay, thank you. I just feel like no matter food is good or not, but 15 minutes is not enough.
Well,
15 minutes,
15 minutes is not enough.
Yeah, you can imagine if they go to bathroom, have to online,
correct.
Then come back, it's no time.
And 45 minutes is great, but if the food is terrible, it's not good for the kids. So, the time management is definitely a big issue.